Let's kick this
Welcome
episode
to
off
Data
with a summary of the survey results from last week.
Our season about
As you may
survey
recall, I
design,
asked you to
interpretation,
participate
and
in a very
methodology.
short survey
Let your
about
voice be
your
heard at
thoughts on AGI.
survey.dataskeptic.com.
Thanks to those that responded. If you want your voice to be heard, it's survey.dataskeptic.com. This week I'm asking about ChatGPT. But my first question in last week's survey that we're going to share the results for now: which statement best describes your belief about the emergence of artificial general intelligence? 8% of you think AGI is impossible and will never occur. In what I assume is a coincidence, 8% also believe that AGI has already been created. But everybody else picked an option that had a year in it, so let's break that down. In fact, let's take this in order. I offered the years 2023, 24, and 25 individually. Nobody picked AGI being created in 2023, which I guess implies that the people who thought it has already been created think it was created before January 1st. But anyway, 5% said 2024 or 2025, an aggressive timeline. I then did some ranges. How many of you think AGI will be created in 2026 to 2029? Kind of a weird range, but I wanted to get onto the decade system. That's a surprising 24% of you, but not yet our most popular answer. No, the most popular answer came next. A whopping 33% of you reported that the best statement that reflects your beliefs is that AGI will be created in the 2030s. And I'm going to group the rest together. The remaining 24, give or take, percentage of respondents believe AI will be created in 2040 or later. That includes later than the year 2200, which a little under 3% of you picked. Gosh, I wish we had done this a year ago or 2 years ago. I'll do it in a year's time and see how it compares. Actually, it would be interesting to do it in 2035 and see where we're at, since the most popular answer is that we're going to be speaking to artificial general intelligence in the next decade.
Can you tell us a little
I
bit
forget
about
what
the
I
focus
voted,
of your
because
work
my
there?
view on this is evolving
My research
quickly.
spans a
You know
wide
what else
range
my
of
views have
things.
evolved
I've worked
quickly on
projects
recently?
ranging
It's
from
education.
theoretical
I don't think
control
anyone would say that any
to
class or
understanding
university or
misinformation
program
spread.
is perfect.
I
There's
guess I
always room
care
for
a lot
improvement.
about
In my mind, the
my teaching,
improvement
and I
is
spend a
doing a
lot of
more
time
complete
thinking
or
about
more
it.
efficient or in some way better
I
job of
regularly
transferring
teach
information into the
classes
students.
that
And
are
today's interview
over
talks about how
1,000
you can do
students.
that
I
forming
have a
inclusive
staff
study
that's,
groups.
over
Of course,
100
I found it
teaching
because I was
assistants
looking
and
for research
tutors at
using
times.
surveys,
So I
and
spend a
indeed
lot of
student
time trying to
surveys were
think about
used to gauge the
how we
success of this
can,
project.
really
But more so than the
deliver
survey, take an
quality
interest in the
education to
methodology we're going to
people
talk
at
about.
this scale,
The
even
relatively
though,
simple to
the
execute
student-faculty
algorithm
ratio
that
might
the
not
authors
be as
created
high
could be used in other
as it might
classrooms
be
and
at
other
some other
settings.
institutions.
And it
I'm
seems
focused on
inclusiveness
how
could be
I can
managed
make
without
sure
much
that
cost even.
I can
You'll hear all
make every
about that
student in the
more
classroom
coming up
really feel
next.
included and welcome and meet everyone where they're at.
Definitely. I'm curious, is there a long history of scholarship on this? It seems like it could be a new field that, even though it's been there the whole time, how to optimize teaching.
Yeah, I think optimizing teaching is something that, in terms of scholarship, there's a long history of work. I mean, at Berkeley, we have an entire graduate school of education. There's lots of different theories of how a student learns. We haven't had classes at the scale at which we're teaching until very recently. And I think that there are a lot of innovations that we're doing, but I don't want to claim that we're the only people doing these kinds of things. I think Berkeley is different in that it's one of the first universities to have these 1,000+ student classes. We've definitely been innovating in terms of trying to get the scale to work out. In terms of the history of scholarship, I'm not sure that there's been a lot of work studying how to optimize 1,000 student classrooms.
Sure.
There might be, but I guess my training and my PhD and all of my research so far has been largely in information theory, theoretical control, machine learning. So that's kind of the focus of my research. And I've gotten into education and teaching more as a practitioner, in the sense that, well, as part of my job as a professor, I teach, I care about my students, and so I want to do right by my students. Hence, I think about how I should teach best. So in some sense, I'm coming at this very much as an engineer. And then there's some research questions that fall out of it. What we see is that, students coming in from high school, or maybe they're transferring to UC Berkeley from a community college, they're extremely excited and, eager to learn. But Berkeley has a tough curriculum, and we find that sometimes it's shocking to students. And we see students coming to us from the smallest rural high school in California, as well as from very established high schools in, say, Silicon Valley. People come to us from a wide range of backgrounds. And when you have 1,000 students, you have extremely diverse backgrounds and personalities and level of preparation. And one of the key questions is, how can you, in such a diverse setting, make sure every single student can find something that's new, where they can grow? And no student should feel like they're out of place. Everyone should feel like they belong. So it's a lot of layered teaching and trying to think of intentional interventions that can level the playing field for students who are coming in from such vastly different places.
Well, if you are one instructor with 1,000 students, I don't think it's mathematically possible to give each of them a dedicated hour of your time.
It's not.
So what are some of the mechanisms that we can use to help promote things in the course?
Study groups are a huge focus of what I've been doing recently. Of course, we have a lot of teaching assistants. We have training, intensive training for the teaching assistants on how to teach at this scale. But study groups is kind of a new direction that I moved in quite recently in the last few years to try and get personalized experiences for students in the classroom. This study group project really started from the experiences of some of my students. So I had a student, Gloria, who was actually a co-author on this on our paper, who told me her story of struggling to find study groups and people to work with. And when I started looking into things, I actually found a news article from 2013, believe it or not, so 10 years ago, where I can read this quote out to you. The then director of the African American Student Development Office said, "A Black student might be in a science course, and the professor says, okay, everybody has to have a study group. Nobody picks them for a study group. They first have to show they can get an A before they get selected." And then we had actually another student write an open letter to the department about their experience. This was the president of the Black Graduate Engineering Student Association at Berkeley. And they said, "I've stood by Black computer science undergraduates who were constantly ostracized in group projects, often the last ones to be picked. Their peers regularly perceive them to be less knowledgeable and capable in carrying coding projects. I have had to console crying teenagers scarred from the experience, questioning whether being Black was worth it. Imagine that. Their only path to recognition in that environment was through a bogus burden of excellence. Whatever happened to the opportunity of being average, yet respected?" And then the pandemic hit, and we had to pivot from, having all of these 1,000 students in one room, where at least you had the opportunity of sitting next to someone, to all of these 1,000 students being in their own homes, not really being able to connect with anyone. It felt absolutely imperative that we try to get people together in some kind of structured way. And so I think about our we call it our automated inclusive study group at scale project, I guess. Our goal is that it should take no overhead for a student to find a high quality study group. They should be able to, meet a group, try it out. If it works for them, great. If it doesn't work for them, find a different study group. This is not a hard problem to solve in the context in software in some sense. Like, we have a lot of different ways in which we can think about matching students together.
One of the easiest things you could have done is just randomly assign students at the roll of a dice to groups that would have met a version of the goal. And so maybe that's our control group or something like that. What sort of improvements might we want above that?
Student schedules are extremely complex. And so in our matching system, we went a different route from random assignment, even though I can talk more about random assignment. And I think that there is different ways in which we can make that succeed. In our system, we decided that if you cannot meet each other, then clearly this is a failed endeavor.
Right.
And we had students all around the world. We had students in India, in China, in Europe, in all time zones in the US. So we asked students, first and foremost, what time zone are you in? Then we asked them to tell us what their course schedule is. When do they want to study? When do they want to meet up? So we said, do you want to meet on Monday mornings, Monday afternoons, Monday evenings? And we tried to group people together based on their schedules. In addition, we asked them some simple questions about how much do you care about this course? We wanted to have people who were really excited about the course. They were really gunning for that A to be able to work together. And then, there's always people who don't necessarily feel excited about the course material and are taking the course because it's a required course. And we didn't want to necessarily create friction in the study group because the people in the study group had differing goals. And so we wanted to be able to create groups where everyone wanted the same thing. And finally, we considered what we call singleton avoidance. A singleton in a group is someone who is the only representative of, say, their particular demographic group, maybe race, maybe gender, maybe other identity that might not even be obvious. And there's a lot of literature that says that people who are singletons in groups experience more stress, have lower performance. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to make sure that we didn't do this to our students. And so we explicitly created groups such that, for example, you would never have a group with one woman and 5 other men in the group. You would always have pairs of people. So you could have 2 women and 2 men. We could do the same for people's racial backgrounds and racial identities. This is something that really benefits from the fact that we are teaching courses at the scale of 1,000 students, because 1% of 1,000 is 10, whereas 1% of 100 is 1. Mm-hmm. Right? So, even if you have an identity that is 1% of your entire class, you can still find partners.
Absolutely.
And so that's something that I find very exciting about this system.
All right, everybody. Today's podcast was supported by the University of San Francisco and their new Master's in Applied Economics degree. So if you're considering grad school and you're interested in data science, let me tell you a little bit more about why an applied economics degree could be the way to go. In the new digital economy, everything is about the platform. As you may know, I wasn't an economics major myself, but I did take a lot of econ classes, and I gained a strong appreciation for econometrics, and that benefited me greatly in my career. For example, my understanding of the Vickery auction helped me to work in search engine marketing, since at least at the time that was the primary auction mechanism of the platforms. And as the digital economy grows and evolves, I've been excited to participate in projects related to tracking of reputation, online experience, and causal inference. And those are just some of the tools businesses are using to make decisions today. Not to be outdone, the University of San Francisco's new Master's in Applied Economics degree is also going to teach you machine learning using R and Python. This is a STEM-designated program, which I appreciate very much. You can get an application fee waiver by visiting this link, usfca.edu/skeptic. Once more from the University of San Francisco in California, usfca.edu/skeptic. Thanks to today's sponsor, Notion.ai. Listeners, the team and I over at Data Skeptic, we love Notion, our sponsor today. We use it every day for organizing the show. And today I'm excited to tell you about an incredible new addition to the Notion suite of tools, Notion AI. Notion AI helps you work faster, write better, and think bigger, doing tasks that normally take you hours in just seconds. And that is totally true. I've asked it to make to-do lists for me, to break down problems into steps, to rewrite an email in a more professional way. You just tell Notion AI what to do, the more details the better. Or you can start a prompt and go from there. Have it write a blog post, make an outline, brainstorm ideas. The options are endless. And for a limited time, you can try Notion AI for free when you go to notion.com/dataskeptic. That's all lowercase, notion.com/dataskeptic. There you can try out the incredible power of Notion AI today. And when you use our link, you're supporting the show. So please use this limited time offer. Try Notion AI. You can try it for free at notion.com/dataskeptic.
So I can see how you would gather data from students about their, availability and identity and things like that and how they want to be matched. And we've talked about some of the virtuous things you want to do, like eliminate singletons and things like that in these groups. What's the algorithm that gets all that work done?
So our basic algorithm is a partitioning algorithm. It's very, very simple. We basically partition people according to first their time zone, then their schedules. And then within each of those kind of, if you think of this as a tree structure, that you know how like you have a big initial group of everyone in the class, and you say everyone who's in the Pacific time zone is in one partition. Within that partition, I put all the people who want to study Monday morning in the partition, so on and so forth. Now that I've identified people who want to study at the same times, I now go through and find what we call partners for students. So we basically, think about tying together students who share racial and gender identities so that we can make sure that every group does not have any singletons. Of course, in this case, you might have, there's only one student who identifies with a particular group. Only one woman wants to study on Tuesday afternoons. I don't know, right? So what do you do in this case? So in this case, what we try to do is we allow for a partition violation, and we, try to say, well, maybe we will put this student with another group, just in this case, to make sure that they might be able to find someone with their same identity. And this usually worked out because students didn't always identify with just one scheduled time. So they would say that I can work Tuesday afternoon or Wednesday morning or Friday afternoon. Like they would give different options and we would move them around. But of course, there were cases where, it simply didn't work out. And so we had maybe very few groups with some kind of singleton presence because we decided to prioritize scheduling. If you can't actually meet up, then, the fundamental of the idea of the study group is just gone.
And in terms of engagement, I don't want to take for granted that every student wanted a study group. Maybe there's some circumstances people chose to or needed to just be independent. But what sort of engagement did you see?
Yeah, that's a great point. So this system was entirely opt-in. No one was required. We had exactly 477 students who consented to our research study out of about 1,000. But the engagement was much higher than that. We had more people participating than consented to participate in the surveys.
And can you tell me a little bit about the surveys? What did participants have to give you as feedback?
Participants had multiple surveys that they filled out. They filled out basically first their preference survey. We tried to make that extremely lightweight, and we just made it a small homework assignment. So on their first homework, they just got, here's a survey. And it was just a little homework question with a couple of these few questions. And then we asked them for a midpoint evaluation and a final evaluation, both of which asked the following series of questions. We asked them about their comfort asking questions in the group and asked them if they agreed or strongly agreed, disagreed or strongly disagreed. We asked them about their comfort sharing ideas with their group mates. We asked them about how often the group actually met. We asked them about how frequently students participated. So by that, I mean how engaged students were in the group. Did most students participate? Did only a few do all of the talking and the others were mostly passive listeners? And then we asked them, hey, do you want to continue the study group? The next time you're taking a course, would you consider working with these people again? So these were our evaluation surveys. And we also had what we called reassignment surveys. And reassignment surveys were for the express purpose of asking students, hey, is this study group working for you? 2 weeks after the first assignment was sent out, we asked students if they enjoyed the group or if it was working for them, or for whatever reason they kind of didn't have a positive experience. They could fill out the reassignment survey, which was very similar to their initial preference survey, except with one extra question of what was going wrong in the previous study group. And then we would rematch them with a new group so that they got multiple opportunities to meet various different groups of people.
And do you have a sense of, in summary, what some of those reasons were?
It's quite shocking. We thought that there could be a wide variety of reasons, but the largest reason people asked for reassignment was that their schedules didn't work out with the new group.
Oh.
Even though we had prioritized scheduling was number one. And number two reason was that people ended up in an unresponsive group. So they would say that I sent an email to my group members, but no one actually replied. And I think this is because student schedules just change and student priorities change. And the first week of semester, you're very excited. You want to meet a lot of new people. You want a study group, but maybe 2 weeks in, you actually found out that there's someone down the hall in your dorm that is in the same class and you don't need a study group anymore.
Sure.
So actually a big focus of our future work is to try to think about how to address it. We can come to that.
And then you can ask students, I guess, in like an exit survey about their enjoyment.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that result and any other ways you have of measuring success?
In terms of results on the survey, results about our intervention, one of the most interesting things was that women and students from underrepresented racial groups opted into the system at a higher rate than those from majority groups. The people that we thought needed help forming study groups actually do need help forming study groups, or at least they're excited about joining such a system. So for example, we had about 74% of women versus 67% of men opted into the system. Similarly, we had 85% of Black or African American students opted into the system versus 67% of Asian students opted into the system. And at Berkeley, Asian students are actually one of our majority demographics. That's, I think, is one very interesting result. And then I think there's a bunch of interesting results in terms of how students actually told us what students actually experienced in terms of their comfort in the groups, as well as the interaction frequencies. And we tried to figure out, how do we evaluate how these groups did? It's hard to do a true controlled experiment. A true controlled experiment would say, well, I take my class, I give some students study groups, and I give other students no study group, and I see how they experience the class. That would be the true way of understanding how people did.
Sure.
But that's clearly unethical. If a student wants a study group,
Right.
like I want to give them a study group. And so what we did to compare was we tried to understand, how do students from majority demographic do as compared to students from non-majority demographics. And so, for example, what is really cool is that we found no significant differences between men and women in the groups in terms of how they answered questions such as, were you comfortable asking questions in the group? How often did your group meet? Would you like to take future courses with your same group? Men and women answered quite similarly. There was no statistically significant difference between their answers. Similarly, if you compare racial demographics, again, for all of these questions, we found that Black students as well as Latinx, Hispanic students did not show any statistically significant differences from the two majority demographics that we compared against, which is Asian and white students in our classes. So I think that's something very interesting. The last demographic group breakdown that we looked at was by student year. And here we did find significant differences. In fact, we found that the freshmen did, just were happier about everything as compared to more senior students.
Okay.
And I guess that's not that surprising. We find that freshmen are often the most enthusiastic students in the classroom, and therefore were more likely to be enthusiastic about probably making friends. It was their first year, and they really appreciated the system. One last thing that I could add in terms of our results was that we also tried to understand whether this impacted learning outcomes, which I think is in some sense a holy grail. Like if you can make students learn better, wow.
Yeah.
And it's difficult, of course, to have a true controlled study. But what we found was we found a correlation between those students who were in high comfort or high interaction groups with better performance on their final exam. So of course, I cannot find causation here, because maybe students who were doing better in the class anyway were more comfortable in their groups, but it's still something that is positive and makes me feel that the groups are a good thing to do.
Well, do you have any broad recommendations of rollout, whether it be, even at your own university or at other places? How can some of the learnings here be applied elsewhere at even bigger scales?
So this is a big direction of future work. We started out with having this system be implemented in just one course, my course, and now we're doing it in 6 different courses in our department. And we're looking to build out a scalable system that can be ported across universities easily. One of the challenges in this is that we have to build usable software. And right now our software is a little bit of a research prototype software. So it's a research thrust for us to make this software easy to use for instructors. There would be also some interesting questions to ask about, could we learn from our rollouts of this program in terms of what groups work and what groups don't work? Can we improve the experience of students through the data that we're collecting? What is important to students? What isn't important to students? This requires asking more nuanced questions than we've been asking so far, but that's another direction that I'm looking to expand in. I guess the other last idea that I think would be very, very cool is that there's been documented evidence that shows that cohort effects are very positive. So this means that, for example, having a bunch of students from similar identities taking a course at the same time, for example, or in terms of hiring people, there's advantages to hiring if you're multiple women at the same time instead of hiring a few women every year, for instance. And if we could use a similar strategy to form cohorts of students, that I think would be very exciting. What we find is that sometimes in upper division courses, in a freshman course, you have 1,000 students and there's a lot of different people. But as you go to upper division, maybe there aren't that many students from a particular identity group. For example, I remember as a woman when I was a student, as I got to more and more specialized upper division courses, I was more and more likely to be the only woman in the classroom. But maybe instead of every woman taking the class at a different time or according to a different schedule, if we cohorted these folks and said, like, instead of half of you taking in the fall and taking in the spring, if we could all have you take that course together in the fall semester, we might be able to give students a much more positive outcome. So I think that's another direction for future work.
And I'm curious if you see the possibility that maybe your partitioning algorithm could be used in groups outside of just the classroom.
Yeah, I think the algorithm has potential very interesting applications in the context of micro work or flash teams that one might be pulling together. There are platforms out there, for example, InstaWork, that let's say you have a big event at a stadium and suddenly you need a large staff for a particular event at a particular time. There might be value to constructing teams that are based on demographics, previous experience, familiarity with each other, or the same kind of singleton logic that we've been thinking about. Different contexts will, of course, have different preferences and different requirements. But I think the same style of partitioning algorithm might actually lead to workers in flash teams or micro work scenarios having more positive experiences in their work and, therefore having increased productivity all around. And so I think that would be a very cool kind of future direction also for this to build.
And is there anywhere listeners can go online if they want to follow the project?
My website, which is just eeks.berkeley.edu/Gireeja, would be a great place. We recently have a publication in the SIGC conference, so that's online. And I'm looking for collaborators. I'm looking to interact with people who might be interested in, understanding the future of this. I think we have a very cool potential for understanding team dynamics and group work in real world settings. So I'm looking to collaborate with researchers from the social sciences or business schools, as the case may be. So anyone who's interested in studying group dynamics through surveys or otherwise in the context of classroom work, I'd be very interested to connect.
Yeah, a lot of exciting opportunities there, I think.
Yeah. And there is this one story that just kind of has stuck with me that I'd love to share.
Absolutely, yeah.
This is one of the students that shared this with us, which she said that starting my freshman year of college virtually due to the pandemic made me feel really disconnected from the Berkeley community. But luckily, being part of a study group in my first semester really changed that. As a woman and underrepresented minority in STEM, my study group gave me the support system necessary to succeed in an extremely rigorous and minority isolating major. This group was essential when it came to having people to complete assignments, learn concepts, and study for exams with. But it was also very helpful in me finding lifelong friends. Through my study group, I met my first and closest friends at Berkeley who would help me adjust to college in an online world and who later became my supportive and caring roommates in my sophomore year of college. And this is just a dream for me as an instructor, right? For me to be able to facilitate, and not me really, but just this structured intervention to be able to facilitate significant friendships is just amazing. I mean, in my dream world of success, no one would need to sign up or opt into a study group system because they all already had such strong networks. So that would be perfect if that could somehow happen.
Absolutely. No, I think it's a great vision and a lot of ways to produce even more qualified engineers through the whole process.
Fingers crossed.
Thank you so much for taking the time to come on and share the work.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, that concludes this installment of Data Skeptic All About Surveys. Please head over to survey.dataskeptic.com and answer 3 questions I have for you about ChatGPT. We're going to share those results next week. That's survey.dataskeptic.com.